Hello.
Here we go.
Wow. Okay.
And that's the second week we've used our new introduction and makes us feel like we really know what we're doing. I'm Michael, and Maya's with me as always. Hello.
Yes. Hello. Hello.
Well, so as everyone's joining us, we were just talking about how the Cubs lost twice to the Dodgers, which for anybody who's in Chicago understands that Cubs losing games is pretty much what we do best. It took us 108 years to win the World Series. Yeah, but Bill Murray was there. It was just wonderful to see them play the Hanshin Tigers. Fun fact, you can see here, I got my Chicago, Osaka, Sister City shirt on today. I was there when the mayor of Osaka came to Chicago to sign the.
I should have worn my Cubs t-shirt. I have one.
Oh yeah. Oh well. We can run and get it while I'm babbling while people are logging in. And they were talking about doing an exhibition game in Osaka. So I think I was kind of there when they were planning what ended up happening here in Tokyo. It was kind of neat. Speaking of events, now our podcast, because a lot of people like it we're getting really popular because we have a lot of in-depth information. So there's a timelessness to this, or at least for now. But there is an event happening for all my Chicago friends. And our guest is involved with this. So that's why I don't mind the cross plug. If you know Sophia, she runs Asian Pop-Up Cinema. And they have their Japan Cinema Showcase. It starts this weekend, this Saturday. They got some wonderful films. I think on March 22nd, they're going to have Belonging, Sunset Sunrise, and Yukiko, a.k.a. Mark will be in town, our guest Mark Schilling. We're going to introduce him in a second, for A Samurai in Time and Crosspoint, I believe. For anybody who's interested, and by the way, not just Japanese films from Hong Kong, China, I think the Philippines are represented, Taiwan, South Korea. It's a wonderful thing that happens here in Chicago, and it's going to be happening for the next month. If you go to AsianPopUpCinema.org, that's AsianPopUpCinema.org, get some tickets. Check this out. It's not very often that you get to see Japanese films in the theater, and a lot of the films that get brought over by Sophia, and I know Mark chooses some of these films as well, they don't get that exposure. You can't find them anywhere else. You won't find them on Netflix or Prime. So be sure to check it out. It starts this weekend, Asian Pop-Up Cinema here in Chicago for all my Chicago friends. Now, when I agreed to do this show, there were a handful of people, and 2 or 3 people in particular, that I said, well, if I'm going to do this show, I have to have them on. And Mark Schilling was one of those people. Now, I've actually interviewed him once at Asian Pop-Up Cinema 2 years ago about his film, A Convenience Story. It was A Convenience Story or just Convenience Story, Mark?
Convenience Story, yeah.
Convenience Story. It's a great film. I don't know if it's readily available here in the States or not, but if you can get your hands on it.
Not yet. Coming.
Check
It's coming.
It's coming.
We haven't given up on it
yet. Yeah. And for those who don't know, Mark has been he's the Roger Ebert of Japan. Is that right? I don't know. You're your own thing, though. You're your own guy. So, but that's the shorthand. You've interviewed Akira Kurosawa, and if you don't know who Akira Kurosawa is, you're in the right place because you're going to learn a lot about Japanese cinema tonight. Mark Schilling is a lifelong veteran. You've written books, you've been in the papers, you know more about, I think, Japanese cinema than most human beings on the planet, and we're thrilled to have him on the show today. This was one of the shows I was really looking forward to. So thank you, Mark, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's always fun to connect with people in Chicago. Yeah, I love going there.
We're very talkative and loud. We're just kind of fun. You know, it's kind of like
quite a contrast from Japan.
I don't know. When I was in Japan, I met a lot lot of people.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Maybe it's the Chicago that brings it out, right? I don't know. So Mark, you've been doing this for a long time. So I think we always like to lead off. What was it about Japan? What was it about Japanese cinema? Why did you start on this journey?
Wow, that goes back a ways because Yeah, the first Japanese film I saw that I remember was Godzilla.
Oh,
The
right.
original? The first
Yeah,
one?
Godzilla made a big impression on me, right?
Wow.
But that, of course, back then, like nobody knew, like, okay, it's Japanese, but beyond that, not too much. I mean, it was just kind of a big blank out there for just about everybody. And then I ended up at the University of Michigan, going to the film screenings at the Cinema Guild, the student film organization, almost every week, and seeing films like The Seven Samurai, Tokyo Story, films that at that time were well known by people who knew, but for people like me, it was like a totally new. Seeing something like Seven Samurai, wow, that was made a big impact on me because I thought Japanese, it's totally different in some ways, but in other ways, it's very familiar. It's like an Eastern Western. And the way Kurosawa staged the action, the way he portrayed the characters, made them very present, vivid to me. Like, they're not these exotic entities out there in this distant country. They're, very, can I say, someone like Mifune just burst off the screen. And I thought, wow, they're making that kind of film there. I want to find out more about it. So when I had the chance to come to Japan, I thought, okay, one reason I want to go is to, see the land of Kurosawa, right? So, I ended up, making the flight in 1975, about, I hesitate to say it, 50 years ago, right? So
well, you said it. Sure.
Yeah, that's kind of what brought me here.
Yeah, I'm getting up there too. I don't remember 75. I wasn't born yet, but I was getting there.
You were around.
What my parents were thinking about it.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
So let me ask you, it's funny because with Seven Samurai, we'll go off the road here for a second. Is that really the first let's get the gang together movie to bring everybody together and do something? Because a lot of people credit Seven Samurai for that. And a lot of people credit Seven Samurai for for good or for bad, the Marvel movie. The idea you bring a bunch of people together with kind of these super characters and you have a job to do.
Exactly. I mean, it was it was the template in a lot of ways. I mean, you look back at it now, you think, oh, it's kind of a cliche. No, it's not. It was the first film to really do it that way. Bring these guys together for a mission, right? Of course, Kurosawa was a big fan of John Ford, and you look back at a film like Stagecoach, where strangers come together and they're on a journey together, and they go through an experience together, and they grow together. In some cases, they die. But I don't know. Again, you could say, okay, there are predecessors to Seven Samurai, but the way he approached it was different, and I think a lot of people were influenced by that.
And Mifune
beginning with the Magnificent Seven.
Yeah, right.
Mifune kind of a straight ripoff of Kurosawa, right?
Right. So, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and of course, Mifune.
And then one after another, right?
Yeah. So you got interested, and then how did your career happen? Because obviously you started writing and doing movie reviews, and you became heavily involved. And that was in the 80s, right? 80s, 90s?
Exactly. Yeah. 1980s. I was writing about sumo.
Oh, right.
I was a sumo guy, back then. But I always had the interest in movies, and I started writing for a local magazine called Japan Times Weekly. The editor sent out a call for people to review films with subtitles. Okay, not Japanese films. She wasn't interested in that for some reason. Can anybody out there review, like Asian films or European films or whatever films with subtitles? Japanese subtitles. They said, yeah, I can do it. I raised my hand. And that's how I got into reviewing, which is something I always wanted to do. Going way back, was kind of like people like Pauline Kael, I admired, but I never thought I could do it myself. And then suddenly I had this chance. So, okay, I'll grab it. Doesn't matter. I'll go out and see anything she wants, as long as I can write about it.
Right.
So that's how I got started, right? And then around, 1989, this good friend of mine who was reviewing film for the Japan Times says, I'm quitting. And he just suddenly said, I'm quitting, right? I said, why? He said, well, I don't like the new editor.
Okay.
So why don't you go and talk to the, the editor of the arts and entertainment section and see what you can do about getting my job. I said, okay, I'll do that. He said, do it this afternoon. So I just walked over to the Japan Times and talked to the editor. She knew my work, because it was a sister publication, right? And said, okay, I'll give you a tryout. And, there were a couple other people. I can't remember now how many. She was also considering for that, but I beat them out.
And
it was 1989, right? So, July of 1989.
And you're interviewing Akira Kurosawa not too long after. You've interviewed a lot of people, or have you? Many
people over the years, right?
Stands out.
But he was my first big interview.
Wow.
Believe me, I sweated over that.
Wow.
And usually, back then it was a little more loose, looser than it is now in terms of access to some of these people. So I was going to do this for the Japan Times Weekly, which was not a prestigious publication, but not very well known in Japan beyond like a certain small circle of people. Right? Mm-hmm. But they said, okay, come and we'll take you to his house. So I was escorted over by the PR guy and, Kurosawa's house in Seijogakuen, not too far from the Toho studio where he made many of his greatest films. And I had about 2 hours with him, which is incredible. And
do you remember?
It's
what was the thing that stuck out?
Walking in, the PR guy said, okay, he just had this press conference at the Foreign Press Club, talking about his film, about the Nagasaki bombing, and one of the correspondents, an American guy, said, well, what about Pearl Harbor? And Kurosawa just stood up and he was enraged. He said, that's not what it's about, and walked out. The PR guy said, you better be careful about that. He may be upset, if you bring that up. And I sat there looking at it, think he's still upset. There's something bothering this guy, and I just wanted to get it off his chest. So that was the first question I asked. And he went on for about 15, 20 minutes, talking about, why it was important for him, to portray that. And that was the beginning. And he just went on and on after that, about different subjects, And some of the things he said just floored me. Like he said, if I were to make a movie about the Japanese emperor, who at that time was Hirohito, now called Emperor Showa, who was, the guy who kind of led Japan during World War II, I'd be killed. They wouldn't stand for it. The rightists in Japan would not stand for it. I thought, my gosh, Kurosawa saying that. So I managed to, get a lot of that into the article. A lot I couldn't. It was I had a limit number of words I could write. So I had the tape. The tape is now with the University of Michigan, right? So
wow, that's
it's
amazing.
Been transcribed, and that was great. But anyway, leaving the interview, again, like I'm in his house and I open the door, the rain is pouring down. It's typhoon season. I didn't have an umbrella. I looked in his, what they call the Genkan, the entryway. He had this wonderful like golf umbrella sitting there. And I said, Kantoku, Mr. Director Kurosawa, can I borrow this? And he looked at me. Yeah, okay. Well, I took his umbrella. Walking out there, and the PR guys with me. He said, we're going to get that back to him within a week. You have to meet me at our office, in downtown Tokyo, and hand it back to me. I said, okay, fine.
Yeah.
But for like 1 week, I had Kurosawa's umbrella.
Wow. There you go. That
was one episode. I went to see his work on the set a couple times. But that's another story. That's so I had that contact. Amazing that I could do that, and never forgot it.
What was it like to be in that environment? Because obviously it's different now. We've talked to people like Ejichi-san, and and he said, like, the way they do films obviously then and now is very different. I mean, what was the vibe when you were first starting out, like the 80s and 90s in the Japanese film industry? Like what stands out to you?
Oh, back in the 90s, I mean, it was Japanese films, well, the industry had been in a decline for a long time. Going back to the 60s when television started coming in. So by the 90s, annual production of Japanese films had hit bottom. It was like 230 films being released a year. I think it was about 1991 when it hit that bottom. Right. And I talked to people in the industry, like the heads of studios, they'd say, oh, Japanese films are over. We're just kind of hanging on. Like there's no way we can compete with Hollywood. We'd love to do something like, Star Wars or, Raiders of the Lost Ark, that kind of thing, right? And they tried. They had their own version of those Hollywood blockbuster films, but they didn't do nearly the same business at the box office, right? So at that time, Hollywood was totally dominant. You have some films from Japan slipping through, but the consensus was, we can't compete. There's no way. It's kind of like a gloomy mood. Where are the great directors? That was another theme. We had Kurosawa, Ozu, Mizoguchi. Where are people like that now? And this was not confined to the industry. This was like the general consensus. Like foreign writers about Japanese films were like gloom and doom. Like it's over.
Mark, do you think that realization at that period at that time actually impacted how the Japanese directors and the movie industry in general actually approached the internationalization of let's say its production? Like we know that. Personally, I'm not very, very deep into the industry, but my impression is that for the past few decades, the Japanese movie industry has kept mostly to itself. They haven't tried really very hard to go overseas. And right. And so I wonder whether that realization that they couldn't compete with Hollywood back then has actually had an impact on the whole development of the movie industry here. Over the past few decades.
Right. I mean, there were attempts, as I said, and some of them, they tried to equal like Hollywood budgets. There was one financed by NHK. Was my oh, there I am. I'm back again. But
we lost you for a second. If I do that, oh my God, we're losing it. Come back, Mark.
That film, the total disaster. Total disaster. Like nobody came to see it, and having that kind of experience, I think they said, okay, we tried, and we've really taken some hard hits at the box office. Maybe it's just not our destiny to like overseas. Anyway, there was that aspect. Just the box office aspect, but also culturally, there was this tendency. Okay, in contrast to like, say Hong Kong, where they're putting subtitles on everything and trying to get it overseas, and having success. Someone like Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, okay, big international stars. They had in Japan. How can we do something like that? Do we have people like Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan? Well, they tried. Sonny Chiba back in the 1970s, right? They had some success with him. But again, the feeling was, okay, we just don't have the necessaries. We'll try. They were sending films out, Cannes and other big festivals, trying to get the recognition and sometimes getting it. But there was a feeling we have our own market. We can make our money back just in Japan. Why do we have to try so hard? We're not Hong Kong. We're not like this little city state. That state.
Well, also,
we have like 100. We can sell our films like how many people were there at that time? 130 million people, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, also
why try so hard?
Yeah, you had like Wong Kar-wai who was putting out stuff in Hong Kong. Like, I mean, his movies were just, and you had people like Quentin Tarantino who was pushing him, you know, Chungking Express and In the Mood for Love. I mean, he just, you know, they sort of had that cool cinematography. They kind of had that like cool vibe. But I think it was I think it was Departures, right, in 2008. And that was Yujiro Takita. That's right. Yujiro, that wins the Oscar. And I think that's when maybe Japan recalibrates and says, oh, we can kind of do these sort of indie, slow, kind of like thoughtful movies, because that's when Koreeda starts coming up.
Yeah, the 90s was when a lot of people came up. So I was there, you know, real time, you know, seeing this happen. And I wrote an essay, God, it was like 1993, 1994 for a local publication proclaiming, like, you know, the new wave of Japanese cinema. I was seeing that, you know, people like, this is before Koreeda. This was like when Kitano was coming up. When Kurosawa, Kiyoshi Kurosawa was coming up. You know, people that are now very well known, you know. But back then, you know, maybe just known in Japan, and then suddenly, bang, a film like Sonatine gets out, proclaimed as this great masterpiece, right? Who's this guy Kitano? People became very curious suddenly, you know, about new Japanese films. So I could see that happening, and I thought it's not as bad as a lot of people think. You know, like there are a lot of like promising younger directors, you know, coming up. So I thought, but also,
yes, I wonder whether, you know, in general terms, once again, I'm speaking in general terms as an outsider to the industry. So do you think that there were some shifts in the perception or cultural perceptions, you know, of what a movie should be? Because as you said, the 60s, 70s, probably there were, and all the Hong Kong movies and the action movies that Hollywood produced and dominated the movie industry globally. So basically the Japanese film industry could not compete with that because they didn't have the necessities, as you said. But gradually, basically, new trends and new needs, new expectations of something that is different from just simple action appeared. Is that what happened in the 90s, let's say, maybe late 80s, and then it is still happening probably? What is your take on this as an observer and an insider, of course?
Right. I mean, yeah, the big breakthrough year for me was 1997 when Princess Mononoke, you know, Hayao Miyazaki's masterpiece of animation broke out into the local market, and then the world. It was like the biggest hit ever in the history of Japanese films. And then, you know, Disney became interested in, Harvey Weinstein was bought it, and, you know, that whole story, right? But, then you have another perspective, you know, Japanese animation, you know, broke through in a big way.
Right.
You know, like a critic like Roger Ebert said, this is a masterpiece, you know, like Miyazaki is like the new master of not just animation, but, you know, Japanese films, world films.
Right.
And there's more recognition for Japanese films coming from that, you know, coming from animation, right?
Yeah, I remember Ebert talking
that's the way a lot of people got into Japanese films, you know, around that time, right? Not through Kurosawa, not through Akira Kurosawa. It was part of animation. And the other one was J-horror. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, again, like 1997, the film Ring, Hideo Nakata. Oh my gosh, that just blew people away.
Oh yeah.
Okay. A totally new approach to the genre. You know, not just ghosts, you know, not just monsters, but, you know, something coming out through your TV screen. The ghost comes from a video, this cursed video. Anybody that watches it is going to die in 3 days. And then, you know, the ghost comes out from, you know, the technical sphere, you know, into the world, into your consciousness. And people have never seen anything like that. It just, wow, this is something new, J-horror. And a lot of people got into it, you know, beyond Nakata. and became this big thing, especially late 90s, early 2000s, right?
Yeah.
So that like animation and J-horror just like, really broke Japanese films out into the world.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny because like they did a remake of The Ring in like 2002 with Naomi Watts, and it actually wasn't
Right.
bad because
Wasn't bad. No,
they took the
I
aesthetic.
reviewed it.
Yeah, they took the aesthetic basically.
Not
The
bad.
idea of the
Naomi
girl,
Watts,
lead, dripping hair, creeping around. Like, yeah, and then a lot of horror kind of stole from that. I remember Ebert though talked about Grave of the Fireflies. That was his jam because
that's another one. Yeah.
Yeah, because he called it the greatest war film ever made.
Isao Takahata.
Yeah.
Who was, of course, Miyazaki's college. They came together to start Studio Ghibli and worked together before that at Toei. But, I interviewed him. Miyazaki was an impossible interview.
I was going to say, he's known for being impossible.
Years, can I sit down with the guy? And they were very polite. They said, well, he's busy, but, we have Takahata. And I said, "Oh, sure, of course. He's like another great genius of animation." And I was able to sit down with him, but he was kind of humble, soft spoken, and kind of in his cubby hole at Studio Ghibli. But you look at his films, and of course, he's at the same level. I mean, in terms of again, you mentioned Grave of the Fireflies. That has to be the saddest film ever made.
Yeah, I was going to warn my friends in the States. Like, it's on Netflix. It is a wonderful, brilliant movie, but it's up there with Schindler's List in terms of joyful watches. Okay, it is very harrowing. It is wonderfully done, but it's very sad. And very sad. But it's worth.
I used to teach that film. I was teaching at a university in Japan, and I got to the point where I said I have to stop. Because when the film's over, I just got to sit there and compose myself. I couldn't do it.
No, it's one
I
of
just
the few
could not do it quickly enough. Students are kind of wondering what's wrong with the teacher. Like, we're sitting here for 10 minutes. Like, but oh my gosh, and that kind of thing where you have these giants, at that time, working at the top of their game. So, of course, you're going to have people outside Japan paying attention. And animation's not the only genre. J-horror is not the only genre or live action genre. Throughout, I mean, you have, people, again, like Cordiata, you mentioned, making some wonderful films at that time.
Yeah.
Afterlife, was a big breakthrough.
Yeah.
I have another question to you. I'm sorry, I have so many questions today, but because you're our insider and specialist today, so please allow me to ask. So when it comes to storytelling, we know that films and movie making is it's not just, but it's really storytelling, and without it, you cannot make any movies. Do you see any specifics that put the Japanese storytelling aside or apart from, or make it really different from the, let's say, American storytelling?
Oh, the storytelling.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really another reason why I think Japanese films had a bit of a problem breaking out. Is especially the more serious films, they love the unhappy ending.
Right. Yes. That's true.
Even in the popular films, like the Yakuza genre, at the end, the hero is arrested, taken away, and no happy ending, right? So that's another. And the other thing that I was told again and again is, the way they script the films is not like Hollywood. It's not a 3-act structure at all. It's kind of rambling. And there was another great director, Juzo Itami, who made this wonderful film, Tampopo.
Yes.
Was one of the films that really got me into thinking about writing on Japanese films. Okay. I interviewed him not too long before he died. And he said, Japanese films really need to have more attention paid to the script writing, the way they structure the films, and his theory was, okay, you got to have the 3-act structure. Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. At the end, there's a resolution. You carry the audience along, and they're involved in the story. Rooting for the characters. It's almost like script writing 101 for Hollywood, right? But in Japan at that time, he was kind of a rebel. He's kind of on. I mean, commercially very successful, but he was an outsider in the industry.
Right.
And the other thing he said, like, there are so many like geniuses in Japanese films, like these directors who are never questioned. Once they attain a certain status, nobody can say anything to them. So they kind of wander off, like becoming self-indulgent, not thinking about the audience too much. And his belief was totally opposite. Like, I'm doing this for the audience,
right?
More than just like, for my own, expression. So he's very successful at that. And at the same time, he's the kind of essayist, like he's writing about Japanese society. So you have, a film like Taxi Woman that examines like that bubble era corruption. People trying to cheat on their taxes and so on, right? It was funny, but it was also like, to the point, like this is what's really happening now. So I thought, wow, this guy also made a breakthrough. Yeah, Tampopo was a big hit overseas.
Oh, yeah.
More than that, his noodle movie. Tampopo.
Yeah, Tampopo. A lot of, for my friends in the States, if you guys want to check a lot of these films, these Japanese films that we're talking about, Criterion Channel has them, and Max has a lot of them. So get yourself a subscription. Criterion Channel is where you can do those deep dives, like A Taxi Woman is on Criterion Channel. Tampopo, I think, is on Max. A lot of them are on both. For all my American friends, check this out. But getting into like when they talk about Japanese storytelling, it's interesting because I always felt like I was talking to a friend of mine today from work, and she was saying, like, I don't get Japanese cinema sometimes. It's like, I have a hard time like grabbing onto it. And I said, well, it's interesting because I always use like Umanichi Diary, which in the States is called Our Little Sister. It's the 2015 film by Koreeda, and it stars Suzu, Hirose, Haruka, Ayase, Masami, Nagasawa, and Kaho are the 4 sisters. And people who know Japanese people know those names. And it's kind of like that kind of the film where people complain, oh, nothing happens. Well, it's like, well, actually everything's happened, but it's all in the nuance of the performances.
Yeah.
It's all in the way the characters sort of move about. And that's what you look for. So I always tell people who are watching Japanese cinema, like, I don't understand, like nothing seems to be happening. It's like, just pay close attention to the performances and how the characters behave around one another, because you'll learn something very new about yourself and about Japanese culture, which is like we talked about last week. It's one of the nice things about really opening yourself up to another culture is that not only are you learning something about other people and how a different way of doing things, but also you learn something about yourself. And Umanichi Diary, that's a movie worth paying attention to, and it's a delightful watch. You could put that on the Hallmark Channel, and people would love it because it's just such a sweet movie. But I always say that somebody should do like a Hallmark Channel, but for the lefty, for the for like that type, and put movies like Umanichi Diary in the States, like get these indie gems rotating. I think it would do great. But yeah. I don't know if you agree with that a lot of it has to do with like the nuance and sort of the subtleties of the performances that the American audiences, unless they're getting hit in the head with a sledgehammer, we just don't pick up on.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, nuances that someone like Koreeda can incorporate into the film. You see a film like Still Walking. Do you know that one?
Oh, I love Still Walking.
Yeah, that's another one where a lot of it comes from his own life. Yeah. His own relationship with his father, especially. A lot of those films have that basis in what you might call autobiography, right? Right. But he expands beyond that, and all these little details about the kind of foods they like, and this kind of conversation that seemed to be just found like from tape on a tape recorder, right? but at the same time, he's building the relationships between the characters. What's really going on here,
right?
Beyond the chit chat. Some of these dynamics, like
right,
mom and dad really don't get along that well.
Yeah.
Which is actually a common theme in a lot of his movies, even his recent series on Netflix has that. Yeah. That's so good too. So
right.
I want to talk about your opinion, like what you think about the 10s and the 20s, but you've also written some books about Japanese cinema, some of the books that people, so I know you've got one that you want to talk about that's very recent, but tell me about this. Tell me about these books. Tell people, we want to know about the books so where you can get them.
Well, yeah, I've written several on my own, and then with other people, and translated some others. Not all about Japanese film, but probably most of them, right? So I have one here that I put together about 5 years ago. Came out 5 years ago on. Can you see that art called?
Oh yes.
Yeah, you can lift up a little higher. Yeah, there we go.
Japanese cinema since 2000, right? So this is the collection of my reviews, essays, and interviews with about 70 people. This is like a 20-year compilation, right?
Yeah.
So I did another book before that called Contemporary Japanese Film that was a collection of 10 years of reviews, right? And some interviews. But this one is longer.
Yeah.
I couldn't get it all in. I mean, my publisher's a wonderful guy. He gave me a lot of space, but people don't understand that a lot. Like, why did you leave this out? We just didn't have the space. I only had 500 pages. That's the limit, folks.
Yeah.
So I tried to get in as much as I could. Again, talking about some of the trends and personalities, in the first 2 decades of this millennium, right?
Now, can we get that book in the States? Can we get that here? Because I know a lot of people who love Japanese cinema who want to get their hands on that book. I'm kind of just serious.
Yeah, it's out there on Amazon,
Okay, good. Or wherever. If you find it at a local bookstore, but I don't know if they should. But they should have it. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my approach, I'm really more of a journalist and reviewer than film scholar. Okay.
Right.
So it's a lot of going out and talking to people, going out and seeing the films, and then coming back and writing about them, one after the other. And then sometimes, like in this book, I try to pull it together, in a longer essay. So I have some of those in there too. And that's what it is. So
I was going to say,
I'm kind of like when I talk to film scholars, I mean, in a way, our languages are different.
Right.
A bit of a difference.
Do you have any personal favorite films that people maybe like? Because everyone knows, I mean, Seven Samurai, Tokyo Story, everyone knows these, but
sure.
So I should say the real people know this. By the way, Timothy Langley and Daniel Garnier say hello in the comments. So hello, guys. Okay. Just they're digging the show. But yeah, do you have any personal favorites, movies that you think that if you love Japanese cinema, you should watch these? And it may not be movies
you should watch. I think, again, like more recent directors coming up, the one that really has impressed me the most is Hamaguchi Ryusuke, who made this wonderful film, Drive My Car.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
I think
yes.
Most reviews I read in the States were very positive. Okay. Mm-hmm. People, of course, going to say, 3.5 hour movie. But I saw it twice. And both times I never felt, nervous, not itchy, like, I want to get up and, do something else. I want to see this. I want to see what's going to happen here. It's a very slow burn sort of movie.
Right.
But at the end, it's just devastating. The revelations between these two characters, the driver and the theater director who has lost his wife, who knew his wife was cheating on him before she died.
Yeah.
And has a lot of questions about everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
And his relationship to the driver, this woman who's taking him to and from this theater. You know, again, like
well, she has her pain.
Is like a modern, for me, it's a modern masterpiece. Just like one of these films, you know, you ask me, okay, what's the best film of the first 20 years of this millennium, right? I have to put that on the list.
Yeah.
And then Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy.
I was going to say, I love that movie. Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy is fantastic.
Yes. And I mentioned Drive My Car first because it's better known. But
because that's the Oscar winner.
Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy, a better movie.
Yeah.
In some ways.
Yeah.
You know, because
they're both,
it's an anthology, you know, shorter 3 segments put together into a film, but each one could stand on its own.
Yeah. It puts you in a mood. Both do.
At the same time, you see the linkage, you know, between the 3. Exactly, right. And he's like, again, I've interviewed Hamaguchi, not for that film, for another one, Asako 1 and 2.
Yeah, that's a good film. I think a little bit of that gets lost in translation because I was kind of waiting for something more to happen, but it didn't. It happened, but I kind of understood. I know it sounds weird, but like I understand that movie now a little bit more than I did when I first saw it a few years ago.
Right. Some of them you really need to see more than once. And I thought, again, talking to this guy, he is brilliant, and especially as someone who, you know, is not just influenced by movies, but knows how to synthesize all these influences into a structure, you know, that, you know, it may seem, obvious what I'm saying, but to put all this together into a film like Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy is like amazing. Because you see I've seen many, many, many anthology films from Japan and elsewhere, you know, where the first segment worked, the second not so much, and what's the theme? Why are they even putting these films together? That sort of thing, right? But with this film, no, it just worked beginning to end.
Right.
Yeah, you got that arc, you know, perfectly, I thought.
Yeah.
And then another film, more recent, Evil Does Not Exist.
Yeah.
Have you seen that one?
Also on the Criterion channel, everybody. So yes.
Good.
My God, that ending. It's just, I don't want to say, don't give away too much about it.
Don't give away. No.
Score.
So
the
again,
score was incredible.
The Japan Times has me rate these films, you know, from 1 star to 5. Okay. Yeah. And maybe in the course of a decade, I'll give 5 stars to 2 or 3 films. Okay.
Yeah, it's like the Rolling
Sometimes
Stones.
I regret. Like, why did I do that? You know.
Yeah.
But
the Pitchfork
Evil Does Not Exist. Okay, that's a 5 for me.
Yeah.
Totally.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Again, like the way he structured it. You know, all these little elements coming together. You know, the gunshot. The hunters are out there. Well, what's going on?
Yeah, it's almost like the less you know about that movie, the better going into it.
There's blood on this bush. What's that from? Oh, a deer passed. You know, what does all this mean? And then at the end, I don't want to give anything away.
No, we can't, because the less you know going into that movie, the better. I think
it just blew me away, and I came out of it thinking, I really don't understand this, but I want to understand it.
Yeah.
And thinking about it, you know, like for 30 minutes, an hour afterwards, you know, like, that's the kind of impact it had on.
Yeah.
So, you know, where,
I'm hoping this jives people up because, like, you think about it, we talked about, you know, Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy. We talked about Drive My Car. I know Perfect Days, even though that's a Wim Wenders.
Perfect Days. That's the great film.
For anime, Suzumi's locking up. Even just if you go back a little bit, all the whole Koreeda thing, Monster, our little sister. There have been some wonderful. We've had a lot of wonderful Japanese cinema over the last few years. It's kind of like it's just been great to experience, and it's kind of like almost.
I feel justified. You know, like I've been writing about this for a long time, like trying to stay. You know, like, is the glass half full or half empty for you? Right. I'm always more half full.
What have you seen recently? What's going on?
That's the way I feel about it. Like, you know, there have always been, you know, great directors. Yeah. The whole time I've been writing about this. And as you said, like within the past few years, more. coming out. So,
what have you seen recently? What would you draw people to? I know, like Sophia, obviously, Asian pop-up cinema is coming up.
Yes,
Samurai in Time is won the award. Like, what do you like? What have you seen recently that you draw?
Okay, and again, she has a great lineup. Japanese films, other films. I'm on the jury this year.
Yeah.
So maybe is she going to hear this? I hope. No,
I told her you're on the show
that I've seen, I've written about. Like, I guess I can say something about it here.
Sure.
Teki Cometh, which is by director Yoshida Daihachi, who I've been following for a long time. And it's another film that just, can I say, you talk about, David Lynch, a film like Mulholland Drive. What does it mean?
Yeah.
What does it really mean? And you think about it. Maybe you can't get to the bottom of it, There's no explanation.
Those are always fun, though.
It's David Lynch, right? And this film hit me the same way. It's about this professor, retired professor of French literature who, living a quiet life alone. The film is in black and white, almost like classical Japanese cinema. And then things start happening to this guy. He has a message on his PC just popping up saying, the enemy is coming from the north.
Okay.
What?
There you go.
What is it? Who's the enemy, right?
Yeah.
And we start to find out, more about this guy, that he has a relationship with this former student, played by another wonderful actor, Takeuchi Kumi, who comes to visit him. And his dead wife is not happy about that.
Wow.
She comes back, and again, you're thinking, is this really happening? Is it his dream? It could be his dream. It probably is his dream, but maybe, there's something else going on here. And, you're going back and forth between dream and reality, and they start to blur.
Right.
What are you really seeing here? The dead wife is sitting at the table with the girlfriend or the former student, right?
Right.
Not very happy.
No.
And that kind of thing, where
right.
the further you get into it, it's like going down a rabbit hole.
Right.
But in a very interesting way.
So for all my Chicago friends, are you in town for that one? Teki Cometh is going to be showing here in Chicago on Friday, April 11th at 7:30 at the AMC New City 14. So we have a couple weeks. So hopefully people see this thing. Yes. Friday, April 11th. Are you in town for that one? Or are you, I know you're in town for like the other two, the Samurai in Time, and then which is on the 5th, and then Crosspoint on the 6th. I think you're in town for,
right. I'm here. I'm in Chicago from the 4th to the 6th, and then I have a break, and then come back on the 10th, 11th, and 12th, right? So,
You'll be there for Brush of God, too.
For me, right?
Yeah.
What's that?
So you'll be there for Brush of God, too, on the 13th. So for everybody, if you're in town and you want to hang out and say, hey, there's Mark. I saw this guy on the podcast. Be in town. Check out get these tickets. A Samurai in Time will probably sell out. So grab those tickets soon. So, boy, man, Sophia should be happy. We've really plugged the heck out of her. out of Asian pop-up cinema. But I'm a true believer in what they're doing, so what she's doing. So
right. So
what you're doing.
Yeah, she has, again, like a diverse lineup. It's not just like art films. It's also like a very populist film, which I'm thinking of the Japanese title, Time Slip Samurai.
Time Slip
Samurai.
Yes.
Samurai Time, right?
Yeah.
Which was voted by the Japanese Academy as, the best film of last year. And made by this very unknown director, who somehow put together the budget, very low budget film, and started very small scale, then broke out across the country, became this big hit.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just loved it. And I can understand why. It's kind of a throwback to classic Japanese samurai films. Okay,
Mhm.
the way they made them, for films, for TV, until very recently. I mean, there's been a big decline in the whole genre. Like
Right.
the
Yeah.
number of films being made. That sort of thing, right? So it's about this samurai who ends up at the Toei studio in Kyoto, which is a kind of theme park. Have you ever been there? It's
No, I haven't. I need to. Next time I'm going, I'm going to
I
check
made a
this out.
point to go a few times. It's really fun. To walk the streets. Like you're in the world of the samurai, and then they have the museums and the studios. But anyway, this guy ends up there. He's a samurai, right? He's from the the 19th, towards the end of the samurai era, right? Bang, he ends up in the present day. But everyone around him like dressed as people from his era. So he's like totally confused. What's going on here? They speak a different way. I mean, they're all these kind of strange looking things like cars and
oh my God,
film cameras, what's going on here. So it's funny at the beginning, right? And then becomes more of a human drama as he
and so Samurai in Time, that's at Saturday, April 5th, 2 p.m. Showtime, and that's also at the AMC News City 14 for all my Chicago friends. It's a must see. You should probably check it out. I haven't seen it yet, but that's when I'm going to go see it. I already have my ticket. Make sure you pick your ticket up too.
I think people will love it. Yeah.
So we're kind of getting close on time here. I know you had another book, and you also did Convenience Story. What would you like to talk about? Because you did a movie. A person who's written about movies, you actually did a movie.
Yeah, maybe just very briefly. I've done all these retrospectives for the Udine Far East Film Festival in Italy, right? Going way back, and one I did about 15 years ago was on the Shin Toho studio, which went bankrupt in 1961. It was only in existence for about 10, 12 years. But in that time, especially like after this guy Okura took over, he was kind of like the Roger Corman of Japanese cinema. He said, okay, well, we were making all these like kind of prestige films with great directors, including Kurosawa, but we're not making money. So we have to do something else. We have to, get the fans to come in. So his idea was, okay, just go for the teenagers. What are they into? They're into, sexy girls. They're into horror. They're into action. So that's the kind of films they made. And some of the directors there ended up becoming very famous outside of their work for Shinto. And, they started, like the founder of the Nakagawa Nobuo, the great director of horror films.
Yeah.
He combined like the traditional Japanese ghost stories with modern day horror. Okay. He put vampires into Japanese films. Nobody had done that. So he's like the father of J-horror. Okay. And someone like Ishitaro, who was making, these kind of sexy, noirish action films.
Right.
Became a big influence on what they call the like pinky horror or pinky action. I'm sorry.
Pinky
action came along like in the 1970s, right? And he was like the father of all that. That kind of thing, where you have these twin strands, like the kind of cinema the critics were looking down on. This is trash.
Was Lady Snowblood part of that?
But they're just fun films, and a lot of them are. I wrote a book about that called
we got another book, guys.
Guns, Ghosts, the sensational films of Shin Toho, which the festival brought out. Okay, but they only sold
that
the
book this way, though. Gotta get that title there. All right, there you go. There you go. Nudes, Guns, Ghosts, the sensational films. Shin Toho. There we go. See.
So anyway, it's about 200 pages with interviews. People who were working for the studio back then, and just about all of them are gone now. So it's a rare opportunity to sit down and talk to some of these people.
May I say that everybody who is watching and interested in having the book that Mark just showed us, the link to the book is in the comments of LinkedIn, and you'll find it also in the description of the video on YouTube.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So, I had a lot of fun writing that, putting it together. So I revived it for Kindle, Kindle edition, and then the hardback, or not, paperback edition.
Paperback.
So anyway, it's
wonderful. Well,
so my own, what can I say, journey through Japanese films has been like high and low. Like, not just focusing on the artistic films, but everything, right? Which
yeah. What's next for you? What do you still have left to do?
Well, as you mentioned at the beginning, I wrote a story that became a film, Convenience Story, which Sophia kindly selected and screened a couple of years ago, right? So I have another one I'm working on, based on my own script. I have a director, and we're trying to get that underway. So,
well, we'll keep
again, like, who knows? It took me 7 years to get Convenience Story on the screen, right? So
I hear you. I'm on 3 for my screenplay. It's still working on it, It's
a long journey, right? But the important thing is not to give up.
Right.
So keep at it, right?
I got to ask you, favorite Kurosawa movie, favorite Ozu movie?
Oh my gosh. Favorite Kurosawa movie, Wow. I mean, just for my own entertainment, I go back to something like Yojimbo, which
Yojimbo's
again, like hugely influential.
Well, what was the
ultimate Mifune Toshiro performance, right?
Yeah. No, those are fun. And then
when you think of him, that's the film you think of first, probably. If you know his work, right?
Well, I think was it Senjuro with the guy they keep in the closet? And then he would just come out every now and then, like they captured somebody, and he would just like peacefully stay in the closet and occasionally come out and offer his opinion.
Sitting there drinking the sake. No, he's up on the tower, kind of looking down at them.
Yeah, which I know, like there was a film, because that was like in the 50s, 60s, and I know there's a movie called like Support Your Local Sheriff, where Bruce Dern plays somebody who's in the jail with no bars, and I swear they took that idea from that movie.
A lot of people have ripped off that movie.
Oh yeah, but no, those are fun. I get it, because you got to talk about Seven Samurai, and I personally love Drunken Angel. That's one of my favorites of Kurosawa. But yeah,
Drunken Angel, of course.
Yeah. But those movies you mentioned. Yojimbo,
Yojimbo,
I just got stumbled up a little bit. Those are just fun.
I mean, he makes one of the great entrances in cinema history. Just kind of coming through which way is he going to go? Just kind of tosses.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Up in the air. Okay, go that way.
And that's a good doubleheader to watch.
Kind of hitching his shoulder, kind of scratching.
The dog walks down the street with that human hand. I remember.
never forget that, right?
Yeah. So, there you go. And then Ozu. Yeah. So Ozu. Who's your favorite Ozu movie?
Ozu.
And again, Ozu is Banshun late again. Okay, yeah. Again, like Tokyo Story, great movie.
Yeah.
It's almost, too
I know, because
obvious
that's my favorite, and I want to try to be cool.
No, there are sections of
Tokyo Story
that. No, when I think of that film, again, like it's more like I think of certain scenes or certain images rather than the whole thing. Like the scene of how the sets go, talking. She's the daughter-in-law has been like keeping the flame burning for her husband who died years ago, and she's taking care of her in-laws while their own children have ignored them, treating them terribly, right?
Yeah.
And I always get choked up when I talk about this. Like the father, Chishudiu, says, you don't have to worry about us anymore.
Yeah.
And she says, I don't mind. It's like, oh my God.
It's wonderful. Now, if
it's wonderful.
Story is available, I think, on Max and Criterion Channel here. If you haven't seen
it, you're getting emotional too.
Watch this movie. You'll see a lot of Wes Anderson. He borrows a lot from Ozu. So yeah.
So. Yeah, I mean, people say, "Oh, Ozu's so like, his style is so distinctive," and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Talk about his stylistics. I think the emotions that he brings out in people. You have this kind of calm surface, and then suddenly something grabs you.
Yeah.
Like at the end of Late Spring, when the daughter has gone and the father's sitting there cutting the apple, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
and
wonderful.
The apple,
it is wonderful.
And falls to the floor. Oh my gosh.
Mm.
So that kind of thing. Where who else can do that?
Right.
So
that's a way. Yeah. What a way to end this podcast, really. I mean, how do you do it? That is phenomenal. Mark, it was a real pleasure having you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Mark will be in town in Chicago for the Asian Pop-Up Cinema Festival. You be sure to check it out. He'll be here for April 5th and 6th, A Samurai in Time in Cross Point, and April 11th for Taki Cometh, and then April 13th, the Brush of the God. And we're really excited to have you back in Chicago. So thank you for doing this.
Yeah, I'll be looking forward to seeing everybody. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then please come back to Tokyo.
Maya. Yeah.
Thank you.
We got to have you back. We
have to have you back in Tokyo.
At least 3 episodes. And you're definitely no exception to that. Speaking of guests, next week we have Chiaki Nanajimoto, and she is she's a producer, director, and founder of Saka Films, and we're really excited to have her. She just shot a movie in Tokyo, and we're going to talk to her about a bunch of things. And once again, the quality of our guests, including Mark here, it's been wonderful. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Okay.
For coming. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And thank you for listening. Japan Expert Insights, and we'll talk to you again in 2 weeks.
We will. See you then.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.